Kar Kadosh, Boker Or, Masechet Bava Metzia Daf Petet Amud Aleph, 89A1. We are a few lines down where it says Tanu Rabbanan, 2, 4, 6 lines down. Last word on the line, Tanu Rabbanan. We learned in the Braita. It says in the Torah, we're talking about the Yisur of Daish. What does that mean? You're not allowed to be chosem, you're not allowed to muzzle the animal, right? By Daish. Lo tachsom shor bedisho. Right? What is Daish? Daish, right? He says, Ma Daish miyuchad davar gedul lekaka, right? Upoel ochel bo. When we're talking about here, it means that we're talking about things which you reap, right? You do threshing, right? So therefore, just like the Daish has to be something which is growing on the ground, and the poel eats it, the worker eats it. So we're talking about gedul lekaka, which the poel is eating it. Yatsa chole v'mechabetz v'megaben she'enu gedul lekaka ve'en poel ochel bo. It comes out that somebody that's going to be choleva be'ema, milking an animal, or he's making the cheese, which they usually used to put the milk and everything, the whey and everything. They used to put it in the they used to make the cheese. No, but how do we make it? They make it in the intestines of the animal, in the kibbah. How do you say kibbah in English? Intestines. They used to put it in the part of the animal in order to make it cheese, because the enzymes of the meat of the, I forgot how it's called. Okay, whatever it is. Yeah. Right, so he says in the kibbah of the be'ema or the megaben, which is making gavina, it's not gedul karka, and therefore the poel cannot eat it. Meaning your worker can't start eating cheese, yeah, but he could eat the things which is gedul karka. Lamali, right? So the Gemara says, why do I have to learn it from Daish? You already should learn it. That it has to be gedul karka. Meaning, why do I have to learn it from Daish? I already learned it from when you're coming to the vineyard. The vineyard, we already learned at the beginning, a few days ago, if you remember, that it had to be gedul karka. It has to be something which goes on the ground. So why do I have to learn it from Daish? So I answer the Gemara, we needed it. Salka daita chamina, I would have thought to say hol v'ktiv, since it's written kama, right, which means l'rabot kol ba'ale kama, anything which grows on the ground. So it said l'rabot nami. You remember we said that kama was not only wheat or the 5 grains. We said kama included everything. You remember? But then we said no. That was actually learned from Chermesh, right? And then kama came in. So he comes and he says, no, it's coming to teach us that just like kama, I would have thought to say, and not anything which grows, which even includes something which is not gedul karka, even if it doesn't grow from the ground. Kamash, when it comes to teach you Daish, it has to grow from the ground. Okay? Tanya idach, another thing that we learned from the word Daish. Right? Ma Daish miyuchad davar b'shag gemar melecha. Just like Daish, it's at the time of the gemar melecha when you finish the melecha. Poel ochel bo. So too anything which is going to be gemar melecha, poel ochel bo. Yatsa menakesh b'shumim u'b'shemtzalim. Shol v'in gemar melecha and poel ochel bo. When you're coming and you're going to take out, all the weeds and all the bad things from the field. So you usually do that with a shum and batzal for garlic and onions, right? So when you're doing that, that's called menakesh. Right, you're coming, you're taking away all the bad, the weeding it's called, right? So therefore, he says, since it's not the gemar melacha, because you don't do that at the end, you do it even from the beginning. You don't want the bad weeds that are going to come in the. So you're not allowed to eat it, but it's not gemar melacha. So that's another thing. So first of all, Daish teaches you that it has to be gedul karka, it has to grow from the ground, and number 2, gemar melacha. Says the Gemara, why do I need that? Well, I told you guys already. Chermesh teaches you the gedul karka. Kama comes to teach you that the poel could eat it. And then when it says, it's the time when you eat it, which is going to be at the time of the gemar melacha. So I already learned it. I don't need it from Daish. And so the Gemara, we need it. Because even though sometimes you're going to be taking away the small onions, right, in between, in order to make it, meaning like this. Sometimes if they're too squashed, you don't let them grow. So what do? Sometimes you're going to come, you're going to say, no, I'm going to take away the smaller ones, so that way it gives them more room to grow. Because if not, they're going to be clustered together, they're not going to grow. So therefore, if I'm going to take it off, I'm going to say, maybe that's gemar melacha. Even though I'm taking off the smaller ones, I'm only taking it off in order for the other ones to grow, so therefore to survive. So therefore, exactly. And therefore he says, but it's not considered gemar melacha. That means that was the havami. Tanya yidach, then we're going to learn a third thing. Right? A third thing from Daish. Ma Daish miyuchad. That if it's not going to be gemar melacha for the maaser, the poel is going to eat it. Anything which is not going to be gemar melacha for the maaser, also the poel could eat it. Yatsa bodel v'tmanim v'gargurot. So it comes out that somebody's going to spread out, right, with a magrefa. A magrefa is like not a shovel. It's like yeah, it's like a hoe. It's English. Could it be a hoe? How do you say it in English, Richard?
Hoe?
Hoe? Yeah, it's a hoe, no?
I don't see the word.
No? So what does it say?
I don't see it where you are. Nothing. I don't see no word hoe here.
Forget about hoe. So tell me what the word is. What is magrifah? Yeah. He says with the dates or with the dried figs. He's using a magrifah.
Doesn't say. Doesn't say what he's using here. Not
A
here.
rake? Let me see.
I don't have it.
Rake? It could be a rake. No?
Doesn't have it here.
Kadosh, we have a machlok the poskim here. Is it a rake or a trowel? So whichever one that it is, look it up and see what the image is, exactly what it is. But anyway, basically what it's going to exclude is when a person is going to use this rake or trowel, whatever you want, to break up, whether it's going to be the figs which got stuck together or the dried the dates that got stuck together, or the figs that got stuck together. Right, and so the boil cannot start eating it. So says the Gemara, how could you tell me that? He could eat it. Answers the Gemara, but Papa says, when do we learn that? We're talking about tmarim, bad tmarim, right, which are not really ripe. And therefore, since they're not ripe, and you bring them into these utensils, so therefore they come, and that's when there's going to be sun. That's why he says, loaning for Masechet, and that's why he's allowed to eat it. Tanya Idach, a fourth one. No, because you eat it when it's not 100% ripe. Some people they eat. Huh? No, they eat it then and there, even if it's not 100% ripe. Tanya Idach, we learned in the right also. Daish, there's the fourth thing now. Ma daish miuchad davar shelo nigmara melachta lechala, that it didn't finish the pre for chala, for removing chala from it. Upuelo chelbo, so anything which is not going to for chala, yatsa halash from katef. If you're going to come and you're going to knead, or you're going to come and you're going to make the dough, and you put on a liquid on it, or you're ofeh, you're baking it, which is nigmara melachta for chala. So then he's not allowed to eat it anymore. So ask the Gemara 1 second. But any of those things, you already finished the work. And so the Gemara, we're talking about a chutzaretz, deleka, right? Deleka maaser. Remember, in chutzaretz, there's no real chiyuv of the chala, right? Because of frashat chala and chutzaretz, there's no chiyuv. It's only the rabbanan, right? And that's why we come, we burn it, we do this, we do that. Why? Because really, be'emet, it's not the trumot u'masot and everything is only in Eretz Yisrael, not in chutzaretz. So says the Gemara, so chala memileka. If there's no maaser, there's also no chala. So says the Gemara, no, you're right. The Olam ba'aretz, we're talking about in Eretz Yisrael. Elakashia, it's not a question. Remember that when Joshua, like Yoshua bin Nun, came into the land of Israel, how long did it take them to come into
7 and 7?
7 and 7. 7 years to conquer the land, and 7 years to divide the land. Do you realize that? Think about it. To conquer the land took 7 years, but to divide it between Jews, it took another 7 years. Think about it. It's like yeah. You're lucky it only took 7 and not double, another 14. No, right? But so he says over here, 7 and 7. So he says, Damar more, Sheva Shekishu, Sheva Shechilku, Yitchayavu b'chala. They were only chayav in chala, and they weren't chayav in maaser. So says the Gemara, 1 second, Midi maaser kagarim, but what does the maaser have to do with anything over here? Kamar melacha, kamar kagarim. Here we're talking kamar melacha. If it's kamar melacha, he's not allowed to eat it. If it's before melacha, what's going on? Elamar Ravina, my brother Ravina says, Kero chutani, you have to actually teach together. Daish, madaish miuchad davar shelo nigmara melachtan. That it's not nigmar melacha l'maaseh l'chala, upoel ochelbo. So too, it's not nigmar melacha l'maaseh l'chala. The poel is going to be ochelbo, which means that you're going to actually put them together. It has to be the chiyuv maaseh l'chala together, and that's why it's going to be with the gemar melacha. And therefore, if it's going to have chala, so then he's allowed to eat it until the gemar melacha that he's going to be chayav. Ibailu, so we're going to ask the following question: Poel, ma'u sheyevev bahur. Is a poel allowed to come, and can he actually fry it a little bit and eat it, or not? Toast it. Can he roast it, right? Or he has to eat it raw, the way that it is. Mihavi can avim devarachet. Is like an avim and something else, or no? What does that mean? If you remember, we said you can't take the avim and eat it with something else. You could eat it the way that it is. You can't come and start eating it. You're going to start eating more and more and more, or you have to eat it raw. So Tashema, we're going to try to bring a proof. Do you know that the poel could give them a lot to drink of wine in order that they don't have a lot of grapes? They're allowed to come and dip their bread in
brine.
Brine, exactly, brine, in order that they could eat a lot of it. So you see from here that it's permitted for the poalim to come and to do it. You know, I once went, right, and somebody taught me a rule in business, right? We used to come and we used to try to get that's people all you could eat restaurant, and we wanted that the entire class should go. So we went and I said, okay, fine, this is the price, okay, fine, but we want free drinks. The guy was like, he said, okay, you know what, fine, free drinks, right? Afterwards, somebody comes to me, he goes, you think he was doing you a favor? I said, of course, you know, and like I had to like, you know, you have to get it out of the free drinks. The exact opposite. He wanted to give you two free drinks. I said, why? He says, because when they give you all the soda, your stomach becomes bloated on soda, you don't eat as much. So when you go to an all-you-can-eat restaurant, the opposite, they want you to drink. Nowadays, right, it became such a thing that you have to pay for the drink, right? So you don't want to get a drink because every drink that you pay, you're paying $5 for a can of Coke. You understand? Yeah. Mamash, I went to a restaurant the other day. It's almost $5 for a can of Coke. Coke, you know what it is? It's $4.5, Rabbi Misada, you know what it is? A can of Coke that you get for 30 cents, 50 cents, $4 or $5 for a can of Coke. You're like, Iowa, where are you going? Said, but they come, they're giving you two for free, but they purposely were doing that. So you don't eat. You understand? So that's what we're saying here. Yeah. Yes, it's like a different like they do for salt water, 100%. Yeah. Right? So you see from here, you're allowed to pay teta mubet 89b. So says the Gemara, lachshure gavra. We're talking about to prepare the poel in order that he could eat a lot. So lo kamibaylan, that's what we're not talking about. He kamibaylan lachshure peira, in order to help the fruits, right? That he should eat it when it's going to be fruit, when it's going to be tasty. Meaning, there we were talking about a poel that comes to your house and he has to work. So if I'm not going to give him to eat well, he's not going to work properly. Here, we're not talking about that. Here, we're talking about the fruits. So therefore, when he's coming and he's bringing to fixing the fruits, you're not allowed to come and eat anavim and something else. So fine. So says the Gemara, let me bring another proof then. Tashema, they're allowed to eat the fruits then and there. Right? What does that mean? They're not allowed to put it in the fire. Meaning they could eat it where they are, where they're going to be in the Rashi Ashurot, which is basically where it's in the sun, but they can't, meaning they could eat it there in the sun. They can't start roasting it on a fire. So, right? Exactly, or other things as well, to make it tasty. So says Gemara, no. You know why you're not allowed to do that? Because you're wasting time. Imagine right now, I'm paying him, and he's coming and he's roasting his barbecue here. Iowa, what's going on here? So he says, when is this doubt? What about if he has his wife and children? Right? So can they do it? Meaning the wife and children are not working. So since they're not working, can they take these things that they're eating and put it in the fire? And then they're going to give it to them when it's up. So you're not wasting time of the work. So Tashema. What?
He took the free food for his wife and kids?
No, it's his own food. But can they come? They came to visit him in the work. Now he's not allowed to waste time of work. So can they come? Can they come and they'll do it for him? They're not obligated to do it. Yeah. So what's halakha? So Tashema lo yavet ba'ul v'yochal v'lo yichmor ba'adama. You're not allowed to come and put it into the fire, or you're not allowed to come and put them into the adama. Remember that they used to do hatmana, which is the insulation in the ground, and and then eating it. You can also put it to soften them on top of a rock. Yochal, you do it in your hands and you can eat it. So it says here mefurash that he cannot come and he's not allowed to advance it. I don't know how you want to say it exactly. You can't improve it, right, or appreciate it by doing other things. So it says the Gemara the same thing. Hatam also mishum bitul melacha is because of bitul melacha, right? What does that mean bitul melacha? He says at the end of the day, it's also bitul melacha, right? That means you're stopping the guy from work. And so it's also logical to say that. What is if you're going to tell me mishum bitul kepeira? Because when he's going to come and he's going to sweeten it with a stone, when you come and you soften it on a rock, well, what did you do exactly? You didn't do anything. So says the Gemara, I said, no. When you come and you make it softer, for sure it's going to appreciate in taste, right? So therefore, obviously, it's because of bitul melacha, obviously. So he comes and he says, Tashema. So let's bring another proof then. Remember that in English, you usually use one word for everything. You reap, whether it's going to be the grapes and the this and that. In Hebrew, every single one has its own word. So it says here, the poalim that they're odrim bateanim. So the figs They do odrim. Does it even give you an English word for each one?
Says figs, dates, grapes, or olives.
But it just says reaps.
We're picking.
Picking. Okay. In Hebrew, each one has its own noun, right? Each one has its own, like adjective explaining it. So it says odrim b'te'anim. Godrim is by dates. Botzrim is by anavim, right? Moskim bezetim, right? Arelu ochlim upturim. These you're allowed to eat the fruits, and you're going to be put from maser. Shatorah zikta lahem, but the Torah gave it to them. Befitam, but with the bread. No, that's what he's saying here. With the bread, he says you cannot eat it. He says why? And they have to take the shoot on the balabait. He can't exactly because they crush it, the olives. The right? So he says velo yispot, right? B'melach yochal. He says also they're not going to be tovel b'melach. And that means you can't dip it in the salt. So it says melach vadai can be for sure you can't dip it in salt because salt is considered anavim v'davar right? Velo yispot b'melach yochal. This is why you can't come and put it in salt. Why not?
It's like toasting it.
Or meaning we have a contradiction. If you're going to come and you're going to take a poel, a worker, to come and start digging, right? Or to come and to start covering over the roots, underneath the olives. You're not allowed to eat. If you take them to pick, or to come and take the olives or the grapes, or to pick also the same thing, you're allowed to. If right now came and you were katzatz, how much are you allowed to eat? So achat ve'achat yochal, shtaim, you could only eat one by one, but not two by two, which means that what happens if he came and he told them how much is he allowed to eat? He told them, you could eat a certain amount, and that's it. So what's it? Lo yochal, so then you're allowed to eat. But you could dip it in the salt and eat it. So it's hey, where are we going on? So he says, we're going to tell me that we're talking about on the seifa, given the katzatz, right? He says, 1 second. Whatever there was a ketzitza, that's what you're allowed to eat. If I come and tell you, Richard, you're working on my field, and you could only eat 5 grapes. So that's it. There's nothing to talk about. What else are you talking about then? But obviously, we're going in the Reisha, right? So obviously,
What's the difference?
one more time. We said that there was going to be a Reisha and there was going to be a Seifa. The Seifa is that the last case, which basically he made a Tnai, how much is he allowed to eat? That's called katzatz.
Are you allowed to do that?
Well, yeah, that's what you just said. Give him the katzatz. You did it before.
But so if you stipulate, you're allowed to do that.
100%.
No,
because
eat what he wants.
No, you're allowed to stipulate beforehand to tell him how much is he allowed to eat.
Okay.
So that's the seifa. The reisha was obviously where you didn't do that. So he comes and he says. So therefore he comes and he says in such a case, right? So Amar Abaye comes and he says, "Lakasha." It's not a question. Come ba'aretz, come bechutz haaretz. There's a difference between Israel and chutz haaretz. Why? Be'eretz, right? Ba'aretz in Eretz Yisrael, kava sfita. Right, the melach and everything is what's mechayev and maaser, and therefore the first writer says that you're on the when we're talking about now about dipping it in the salt and everything is going to be until you're going to take them off. You have to take off the maaser in such a case. But in chutz haaretz lo kava sifita, right? You don't need the salt in order to be mechayev maaser. Ever since you don't need that, so therefore the poel is allowed to come and put it into the salt without any problem whatsoever. Okay, huh? Yes. Okay. And there's a difference between chutz haaretz and Eretz Yisrael. Yes, 100%. So that's what he says. So in Eretz Yisrael, there's trumot u'masro mina Torah. So therefore, the dipping of the salt already is mechayev maaser, and therefore you're not allowed to come and dip it in the salt. But in chutz haaretz, where it's patur midoraita and it's only midorabanan, so the poel, the worker, is allowed to dip it in the salt. Amar Rava argues on this answer of Abaye, and he says, "Mi kamide." Right, and he says, right, as follows. He comes and he says, "Mi kamide the baaretz kava sifta, right, midoraita u'chutz haaretz lo kava sifta." Says, I don't understand. Does there exist something that in Eretz Yisrael, right, it's going to be kava sifta, right? You're going to have the bimechayev the maaser in the doraita, and chutz haaretz you're not going to be chayav. What's going on? And it's going to be mutar lechatchila. Meaning, it shouldn't make sense that it should be mutar lechatchila. Elmaleh, but rather Rabbi says, you're right. Whether it's said in Yisrael or chutz haaretz, chada lo kava sifta. It's going to be one by one. He says there's no problem. You're not going to be chayav of dipping it with putting in a maaser. You can put it in salt one at a time, no problem. But 2 by 2s, you're not allowed to, because then now katzatz. Whatever you stipulated, if you stipulated ben tzva bilo safat achat ochel shtaim yochal. Once you stipulated, you can only eat one by one. You cannot eat 2 by 2s. Lo katzatz, velo safat. If you do not do the kitzir, you do not do the dipping into the salt. Or time you could eat 2 by 2s. 1 by 1 you could eat. Shtaim you're not allowed to eat. Even if you gas the balabait to eat balehu b'maaser the kavod savta. He says he wants permission. He made it like tevel to do the maaser, and therefore now he's not allowed to come and start dipping it in the salt, because what's happening is that once he was katzatz with a balabait and he's going to eat it 2 by 2, it's a sul for him to dip it in the salt, because then it's going to be.
You dip it in salt, no more.
That's it. There's no more processing. You're finished. Finished product. Last line. The kabayis sefita minala. How do we know 2 by 2s you're going to be obligated? Amarvata the Marakabas Pasuk says kibutzam kamid gorna. It says that it's not considered a goren without kibbutz, the gathering, and the gathering is only going to be minimum of 2 by 2s. It's not going to be less than 2 by 2.